Okay, so welcome to the deep dive. You know the drill.
Yeah.
You send us the stuff you're curious about, and we kind of we take a deep dive into it. Really try to pull out the good stuff, the insights. So you can get right to the heart of the topic without having to read through all the stuff yourself.
Right, right. Think of us as your, I guess you could say your shortcut to being in the know.
Exactly. And today we're tackling something pretty fundamental, I think, which is creativity.
Yeah, and the sources you sent, they approach creativity from like all these different angles, like what it really is, the things that block it, and even the role of like kind of ridiculous ideas.
I love that the power of being ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And how creativity ties into disruption, time, even practical techniques. We see some stuff from NLP in here, which is cool.
Yeah, we've got a great selection. The main source, it's titled Creativity. Pretty straightforward.
It's right to the point.
Right to it. And our mission here, specifically for you, is to kind of show you how much creative potential you actually have, and most importantly, how to like really tap into it.
Yeah, how to actually use it.
Exactly. We want you to have those aha moments, the takeaways you can actually use, without feeling completely overwhelmed. So the sources jump right in, don't they? They start with this idea that creativity isn't some like rare gift that only certain people are born with.
Right, right. It's not like you either have it or you don't. They present it more as our natural state.
That we're all creative, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And then the question becomes, well, what blocks this natural creativity? And the sources point to this idea of normality.
Normality. Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds so like harmless.
Yeah.
But the material really frames it as this huge obstacle.
Yeah, like a barrier.
Like a barrier. They actually they even call it a social disease, which is pretty strong language. But it gets at how this need to fit in, to not stand out, can really stifle that natural drive to be creative.
Right, right. It all comes down to this fear, like the fear of being judged, for being different, for trying new things, or even for having ideas that other people might think are ridiculous.
And that fear of being ridiculous, that's a key point that keeps coming up.
Yeah, it's central. And here's something interesting. They actually define the ridiculous as that which is out of sync with time.
Out of sync with time. Cool.
Yeah, think about that for a second.
So it's not just about having a bad idea.
Yeah.
It's more like an idea that doesn't fit with like the present moment.
Exactly. And it goes both ways. Like it could be an idea that's behind the times, something that, people used to do but doesn't really work anniemore.
Got stuck in the past.
Stuck in the past. But it could also be an idea that's ahead of its time. Like, those visionary concepts that people they just aren't ready for yet.
Right. They might sound crazy now, but who knows? Maybe in the future they'll be totally normal.
Precisely. And the sources, they make this really important connection. They say that the people who are most likely to judge your idea as ridiculous, they're often the ones who are really invested in maintaining that normality.
Oh, that's interesting. So if someone calls your creative idea ridiculous, that might actually be, that might actually be a good sign.
It could be, because it might mean you're pushing those boundaries, you're thinking differently, you're outside that box of what's considered normal.
Right. And that's at the heart of creativity, isn't it? That different thinking.
Absolutely. And the sources, they talk about this idea of stepping out of time, which is really, really connected to creativity.
Stepping out of time. What do they mean by that?
Well, they're saying that to be truly creative, you have to kind of break free from being solely focused on the here and now. You have to be able to to zoom out and look at things from a different perspective.
Like those inventors or artists who are way ahead of their time, the ones that everyone thinks are crazy at first.
Yeah, exactly like that. And the sources point out that creative people, they often seem to operate on a different timeline, which can lead to, both admiration and, as we said, a bit of misunderstanding.
Makes sense. It's like they're not bound by the same rules as everyone else.
Right. It's about challenging that current logic, the way things are normally done, to make space for these ideas that might seem out of place.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? How do we step out of time?
Well, the sources, they use a really common example to illustrate this fashion. Think about how trends, they come and go, and then they come back again.
Oh, yeah. Like bell bottoms were huge in the 70s, and then they were gone, and then suddenly, like, everyone's wearing them again.
Exactly. And it's not just bell bottoms, it's everything. The point is that fashion, it doesn't really invent new things. It's more about reinterpreting and recycling styles from the past, and even trying to predict what will be popular in the future.
So it's like nothing is ever really new.
That's the idea.
Right.
And the sources, they use this to take some of the pressure off. Like, you don't have to come up with something completely original, something that's never been done before.
That's kind of a relief.
It is, right. Instead, the focus is on an interpreting, well, what is received. It's about taking those existing ideas, those influences all around us, and then, adding your own unique spin on them.
Okay, so instead of like inventing from scratch, we're more like remixing.
That's a good way to put it. And from that, they give us a really core definition of creativity, interpreting outside of time.
Interpreting outside of time? I like that.
Yeah, it's about looking at things from a viewpoint that isn't limited by the present moment, like drawing on past lessons or imagining future possibilities.
Okay, so with that in mind, do they give us any like practical exercise, like something we can actually do to get those creative juices flowing?
They do, actually, and it's a really simple one. They suggest picking a routine task, something you do regularly, almost without thinking.
Okay, like brushing my teeth or making coffee.
Exactly. And then they say to try and come up with a completely ridiculous, unusual way to do it better.
Oh, I like that. Like brushing my teeth with my left hand instead of my right.
That's the idea. And then the really important part is to actually share that idea with someone.
Share it.
Yeah.
Even if it sounds totally crazy.
Especially if it sounds totally crazy, because the whole point is to break out of those automatic thought patterns, to force yourself to think differently.
Okay, so it's like a mental stretch.
Exactly. And from there, the sources move into talking about disruption, which is it's really closely linked to creativity.
Right, they're kind of two sides of the same coin, aren't they?
Yeah, you could say that. Like, if creativity is the initial spark, that new way of thinking, then disruption is taking that spark and really shaking things up.
Okay, so disruption is about like breaking those existing patterns.
Exactly. It's that sudden shift where someone introduces a completely new solution that isn't just a little better, but totally changes the game.
Right, it's not just an improvement. It's a whole new way of doing things.
Yeah. And the sources, they point out that technology, in this context, it doesn't just mean like your phone or your computer. It's a broader term, like the study of technique.
Oh, okay. So any new method or tool that makes something faster or more efficient.
Exactly. And they give some really clear examples. Like, think about how we read now. We went from physical books, which have been around forever, to, e-readers and reading on tablets.
Yeah. And at first, that seems so weird, right? Like reading on a screen, that'll never catch on.
But look at us now. Everyone's doing it.
It's true. And same with music. I mean, we've gone from vinyl records to cassette tapes to CDs to MP3s, and now everyone just streams music.
It's constant evolution, and the underlying message here is that disruption will never stop. It's this ongoing cycle of innovation and change.
So we should always be ready for the next big thing.
Exactly. And the sources, they use the example of the car to illustrate this, which I thought was really interesting.
That's a car. Okay.
Yeah, they point out that the car wasn't just like, poof, invented out of thin air. It actually evolved from the carriage.
Oh, right. Like first there was the horse-drawn carriage, and then someone thought, hey, what if we replace the horse with an engine?
Precisely. And they describe the initial goal as to make the carriage become the horse.
Yeah.
Like to keep that basic function of transportation, but get rid of the limitations of using an actual animal.
So it's like building on what already exists, but making it better, more efficient.
Exactly. And the sources, they make this really cool connection to NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming.
NLP, I've heard of that. It's about like understanding how our minds work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And using that understanding to change our thoughts and behaviors. And the sources suggest that NLP can be a really powerful tool for boosting creativity.
Okay, so how does NLP tie into all of this?
Well, they introduce these two key mindsets that they say are crucial for unlocking creativity. The first one is it's called the modeling mindset.
The modeling mindset.
Yeah, and it's basically the idea that if someone did it, I can do it too.
Oh, I like that. So it's about learning from people who are already successful, already creative.
Exactly. Like finding those people who are really good at what you want to do and figuring out how they think, how they work, and then and then adapting those approaches for yourself.
Okay, so find your role models and learn from the best.
Exactly. And then the second mindset is it's called the pioneering mindset.
Pioneering, okay.
Yeah, and this one is more about forging your own path. It's the idea that if no one have done it, I will do it so others can.
So being the first, being the trailblazer.
Exactly. Having the confidence to create something completely new and original.
I love that.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful stuff. And then the sources, they talk about NLP presuppositions, which are kind of like helpful assumptions you can make to boost your creativity and your flexibility in thinking.
Okay, so they're not like hard and fast rules.
Not exactly. More like guiding principles.
Got it. So what are some of these NLP presuppositions?
Well, the first one is the map is not the territory.
The map is not the territory. Okay.
Yeah, and this one highlights that our understanding of the world, our mental map, it's just that a representation. It's not the actual reality.
So like we all see things differently.
Exactly, and that's where creativity comes in, when we realize there are many different ways to see the same situation.
Okay, so it's about being open to different perspectives.
Exactly, and they give this great example of how one person might see a setback as a complete failure, while another person might see it as a valuable learning experience.
Right. It's the same event, but two totally different interpretations.
Exactly. And then the second presupposition is if someone can do something, anyone can learn to do it.
Oh, I like that one. That's very empowering.
It is, right. It's this belief that if someone else has achieved something, then you have the potential to learn how they did it too.
So it's about believing in your own ability to learn and grow.
Exactly. And then number 3 is all behavior has a positive intention.
Positive intention, okay.
Yeah, so even actions that seem negative or hurtful, they're actually, at some level, an attempt to meet a need.
So it's about understanding the underlying motivation behind people's actions.
Exactly, and that can be really helpful for problem solving and finding creative solutions.
Interesting.
And then the fourth one, this one is, it's really important for overcoming those creative blocks. It's, there is no failure, only feedback.
Oh, I love that one. I need to write that down.
It's a good one, right? It's about seeing every outcome, whether it's what you expected or not, as an opportunity to learn and improve.
Okay, so no more beating yourself up over mistakes. Just learn from them and move on.
Exactly. And then the next one is flexibility is the key to success.
Flexibility. Okay.
Yeah. The idea is that the more options you have, the more ways you can think about a problem, the more likely you are to find a creative solution.
So it's about being adaptable, being able to adjust your approach.
Exactly. And then we have the mind and body form a system.
Okay, so this is about the connection between our physical and mental states.
Right. Like how our physical health can affect our creativity and vice versa.
So like if I'm feeling stressed or tired, that can block my creativity.
Exactly. And on the flip side, if you're feeling energized and healthy, that can boost your creativity.
Okay, so taking care of yourself is important for being creative.
Absolutely. And then the next one is, it's a really empowering one. It's people already have all the resources they need.
Oh, the resources they need. Wow, okay.
Yeah, it's the idea that the potential for creativity, for problem solving, it's already inside you. You just have to like tap into it.
So it's not about acquiring new skills or knowledge. It's more about accessing what you already have.
Exactly. And then finally, we have the meaning of communication is the response it gets.
The response it gets.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not about what you intend to communicate, but about how your message is actually received.
So it's about being aware of how other people are interpreting what you're saying.
Exactly, and being willing to adapt your communication style to make sure your message is coming across clearly.
That's a good point. Especially when you're trying to share creative ideas, you know? You want to make sure people actually get it. Absolutely. And then the sources, they kind of shift gears a bit and they introduce this really vivid metaphor, the horse and speed.
The horse and speed.
Yeah. Yeah, they use the horse as the symbol of like the old way of doing things, you know, with all its limitations in terms of how fast you can go, how far you can travel.
Right, like the horse represents the traditional, the outdated.
Exactly. And then they talk about how the human desire for progress, for greater speed and efficiency, is what ultimately led to moving beyond relying on horses.
Okay, so it's like we outgrew the horse.
In a way, yeah. And they use the example of the carriage, which I thought was really interesting.
The carriage?
Yeah, they point out that the carriage, it didn't just appear out of nowhere. It evolved from the horse-drawn cart.
Oh, right. So it's like we took something that already existed and then we improved on it. We made it better.
Exactly. And then eventually we replaced the horse altogether with, with an engine.
So it's like we're constantly striving to improve, to innovate.
Precisely. And the key takeaway here is remove the horses from your life.
Remove the horses. What do they mean by that?
Well, they're talking about those thoughts, those habits, those processes that might be holding you back. The things that are slowing you down, limiting your potential.
So it's about identifying those things and letting them go.
Exactly. And this brings us back to the idea of being ridiculous, right? Like being willing to challenge those old ways of thinking and doing things.
Right, because sometimes the most innovative ideas, they sound ridiculous at first.
Absolutely. And the sources, they remind us that creativity, it's a natural human capacity, but it needs to be like actively engaged.
Okay, so it's not enough to just like sit around and wait for inspiration to strike.
Right. You have to put in the effort. And one of the best ways to do that is to be willing to embrace the ridiculous, to question what's considered normal, and to think outside the box.
Right, to not be afraid to stand out, to be different.
Exactly. And they have this really nice simple equation: extraordinary equals outside the ordinary.
I like that. Outside the ordinary.
Yeah, it's not about having some like magical ability. It's about having the courage to step away from what everyone else is doing.
Okay, so to be extraordinary, you have to be willing to be a little weird.
You could say that. And then they use the human desire to fly as an example, which I thought was really interesting.
The desire to fly. Yep.
Yeah, like for centuries, humans, we looked at birds and we thought, wow, I wish I could do that. And, even though people like Leonardo da Vinci, they couldn't actually achieve flight in their time, they still had those incredibly imaginative designs for flying machines.
Right. So it's about not letting the limitations of the present moment stop you from imagining what's possible in the future.
Exactly. And the sources highlight how important it is to learn from those who've already achieved things that seemed impossible.
Okay, so look to those who've already done it.
Exactly. And then they even bring in the term horsepower, which I thought was kind of a funny connection.
Horsepower. Right.
Yes.
The unit of power.
Yeah, and it's a reminder that even as we evolve and innovate, we often carry echoes of the past with us.
So it's like we're building on the past, but we're also moving beyond it.
Exactly. And they emphasize that creativity isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing practice.
So it's not like you just have one creative moment and then you're done.
Right. It's something you have to cultivate, you have to nurture.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we cultivate creativity?
Well, the sources, they have this prompt for you to reflect on, and it's creativity is the natural state of my brain.
Creativity is the natural state in my brain.
Okay. Yeah, take a moment to really think about what that means to you.
Okay.
And then they make this this beautiful connection to childhood.
Oh, childhood.
Yeah, they talk about how those toys and games we played with as kids, they can actually be really powerful triggers for creativity.
Right, because kids are so imaginative, right?
Exactly. And they suggest that environments that remind us of fun and playfulness, they can be really stimulating for our creativity.
So like having a ping pong table in the office.
Exactly. And then they introduce this concept of creative idleness.
Creative idleness. That sounds like an oxymoron.
It does, right. But the idea is that taking breaks, even when you feel like you should be working, can actually make you more productive in the long run.
Okay, so it's like giving your mind a chance to rest and recharge.
Exactly. And they compare it to how, like, painters or construction workers, they might naturally pause for a coffee or a cigarette break.
Right, those little moments of downtime.
Exactly. And those moments, they can actually be really important for letting new ideas bubble up. And then they talk about actually integrating fun into your work, like taking quick breaks to do something enjoyable, like playing a game or listening to music.
Okay, so make work more fun.
Exactly. And then they outline these 3 key drivers of creativity.
3 key drivers. Okay, I'm listening.
The first one is being childlike.
Being childlike. Okay, I can get behind that.
Yeah, it's about tapping into that sense of wonder and curiosity that kids have.
Right, that unfiltered imagination.
Exactly. And then the second one is being fun.
Being fun makes sense.
Yeah, when you're enjoying what you're doing, you're more likely to be creative.
Okay, so have fun with it.
Exactly. And then the third one is Being ridiculous.
Being ridiculous. We're back to that.
It's a recurring theme. And the point is that a lot of great ideas, they sound ridiculous at first.
Right. Like the idea of a flying machine probably sounded pretty ridiculous back in Leonardo da Vinci's day.
Exactly. And then the sources, they challenge this common belief that creativity is this rare gift.
Oh, yeah, that only certain people are creative.
Right. They argue that it's actually a skill that can be developed. Like anyone can learn to be more creative.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a much more hopeful perspective. And they even use this comparison of patent filings between Japan and Brazil.
Patent filings.
Yeah, to highlight how cultural factors can influence creativity. Like in some cultures, it's more encouraged than others.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And then they give you this practical action step. They say to make a list of 3 things you can do today that are ridiculous, creative, and fun.
Okay, so 3 things that are ridiculous, creative, and fun.
Yeah.
Today.
Exactly. And the emphasis is on today. Don't put it off.
Right, don't procrastinate.
Exactly. And then they talk about the SPR method, which is it's a way to put these ideas into practice.
SPR method. Huh?
Yeah, it stands for P phase for practice, T phase for theory, and C phase for consistency.
Okay, so practice, theory, consistency.
Got it. Exactly. And then they circle back to the idea of breaking free from normality.
Oh yeah, normality. That social disease.
Right. And they make this this pretty bold statement: normality equals a mental illness.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty strong.
It is, right. But their point is that sticking rigidly to what's considered normal, it doesn't usually lead to extraordinary results.
Right. If you want to stand out, you have to be willing to be different.
Exactly. And then they suggest embracing a bit of irresponsibility, boldness, and stepping outside the usual.
Okay, so be a little bit reckless.
In a calculated way, yeah. Like, don't be afraid to take risks.
Right, because sometimes the greatest rewards come from taking the biggest risks.
Exactly. And then they have this fun little exercise for you to try.
Oh, okay. I'm always up for a good exercise.
Yeah, so they say to pick a song you love, put it on, and just dance to it for 3 minutes. Like, really let loose, let your imagination run wild.
Okay, so just dance like nobody's watching.
Exactly. And the idea is that it helps you, like, connect with your emotions, your body, and it can really free up your creativity.
I'll give it a try.
Yeah. And they also encourage you to check out this YouTube video called Be Ridiculous.
Be ridiculous. Okay, I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, it's all about overcoming that fear of being judged and embracing your own unique weirdness.
I like that.
And then they introduce this concept called the rule of ridiculousness.
The rule of ridiculousness sounds intriguing.
It is, right. And it basically states that the kingdom of creativity belongs to the ridiculous.
Okay, so if you want to be creative, you got to be willing to be a little ridiculous.
Exactly. And then they have this really powerful phrase that they repeat several times. The creative adult is the child who survived.
The child who survived.
Mm.
That's pretty profound.
It is, right. It's the idea that true creativity, it comes from keeping that childlike spirit alive within you.
Right, that sense of wonder and playfulness.
Exactly. And then they use this this really strong metaphor. They suggest that this inner child can be kind of like murdered by the pressures of society and difficult experiences.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a heavy image, but their point is that we have to actively work to protect and nurture that inner child.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, they talk about reconnecting with that playful, imaginative part of yourself. And they suggest that creativity is really linked to this inner sense of freedom.
Freedom to what?
Freedom to be spontaneous,
Yeah.
to make mistakes, to experiment, to play.
Right, to not take yourself too seriously.
Exactly. And then they have this this technique for when those self-doubting thoughts creep in. You know, those thoughts that tell you your ideas are stupid or ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. Those thoughts. They can be so loud sometimes.
They can, right.
Right.
So their suggestion is to, like, intentionally double down on the ridiculousness.
Okay, so if my brain is telling me my idea is too weird, I should make it even weirder.
Exactly. Like, push it to the extreme.
Okay, I like that.
And then they emphasize the power of repetition, like repeating phrases like, the child survived and I am the creative adult.
Okay, so affirmations, basically.
Exactly. And then another practical tip is to share something you've learned each day with someone else.
Okay, so teach what you've learned.
Exactly, because teaching is a great way to solidify your own understanding.
Right. It forces you to really think about it.
And then they bring everything back together and they reiterate that being creative, it's not about being some sort of genius.
Right. It's not about being born with some special talent.
Exactly. It's about having the courage to be different, to be ridiculous, to not be afraid to fail.
So it's more about mindset than anything else.
Exactly. And they describe this whole process as being inspired by this moment of emotional and spiritual awakening.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they suggest things like adopting a power posture, standing tall, breathing deeply.
Okay, so like body language can affect your mindset.
Exactly. And they also talk about the power of music, like listening to music that inspires you.
Okay, so create a creative environment for yourself.
Exactly. And then they talk about actively building your own reality.
Building your own reality. What do they mean by that?
Well, it's about consciously creating new beliefs and images for yourself.
So it's like changing your self-talk.
Exactly. And they give you a bunch of these power affirmations to repeat to yourself.
Okay, like what?
Like, I am a creative genius, or I am a magnet for brilliant ideas.
Okay, so positive self-talk.
Exactly. And then they guide you through this creative visualization exercise.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, where you imagine yourself like effortlessly coming up with amazing ideas and achieving great success.
Okay, so visualize your success.
Exactly. And then they give you a list of affirmations for breaking free from the limitations of normality.
Okay, so how to be extraordinary.
Exactly. And then they step back a bit and they give you this more academic framework for understanding creativity.
Okay, so like a definition of creativity.
Yeah, they define it as the ability to generate ideas that are both novel and useful.
Okay, so new and practical.
Exactly. And they emphasize that this is something that everyone has the potential for.